Okay, you guys, what is up? The King of Lightning is here today to do Zankyou no Terror episode 10 review. And of course, as usual, episode link is not going to be in the box below, so you guys are on your own trying to find it, obviously. So this episode is fascinating in a lot of ways, but I want to talk about the pacing first off, because I was thrown off. I'm not going to lie to you. When it came to the beginning of the episode, based on what happened on the last episode, it almost seemed as if like we were missing an episode in between. And I say that because of the fact that you have a situation where 12 and Lisa were on a Ferris wheel. They were being heavily monitored by the American cats, and they were disarming a bomb, or at least 12 was, and you had 9 on the run with the atomic bomb. But based on that ending, you would assume that it would be 9 who would be free in a sense, and it'd be 12 and Lisa who would be captured by the Americans, the Japanese, whoever. In actuality, episode 10 kicks off with the complete opposite, with 9 turning himself in to the Japanese police department, and it is 12 and Lisa who are somehow free, roaming about somewhere in Tokyo. That was really weird. It was really odd. It threw me off for a loop, because I would have figured that we would have actually had a situation where 12 and Lisa were captured because the Americans had that whole thing set up. So that threw me off massively. And the pacing for the episode in of itself was fine. It's just that the way it started, again, threw me off. So that's number 1. Number 2, the animation, as usual, fantastic. That right there, it's cut and dry. Number 3, the character development. And I guess when it comes to this, the main thing here is 5. Now, 5 in this episode, she reveals that not only does she know that she's going to die at some point soon because of the settlement and her treatment there and the drugs and the enhancements and so on and so forth, but she also reveals that she's never been 9 at anything, apparently, and the only reason why she is still alive today is because of 9. She attained the willpower to overcome 9, and that willpower, that drive to surpass him, has kept her alive. So, weird, but at the same time, very intriguing, and at the same time, too, kind of badass. Kind of, sort of-ish badass. I mean, what it does show is that their experiment was a failure. It was a complete and utter disaster. It was a failure. And they, in essence, would have had all the children in the settlement would have died if not for the fact that 9 and 12 had escaped. And because 5 wanted to overcome 9, she had the willpower to stay alive. So if they were all still in the facility, then they all would have died. Therefore, the experiment would have been a failure in its entirety. So that was also fascinating. And then she kisses him on the lips, and then she kills herself via bullet into the, she kills herself with the car explosion pretty much. So when it comes from a character standpoint, it's mainly 5. She does shoot Clarence in the chest. This dude may be dead, I'm not too sure. It's not confirmed or not. But still, the fact of the matter here is that she actually made, because the way it is when it comes to 5 is that 5, when it comes from, I think, a worldly standpoint, and when it comes from a viewer standpoint, she would be perceived to be ruthless, cruel, just an overall bad person. But it is her respect for 9, because throughout the episode, it seems like she is deranged. It seems like she has this extreme obsession over 9. But it winds up turning into respect before she dies. And once she's finally got to the point where she's overcome 9, has the gun pointed to his face, she's won, but at the same time she's lost. And so it's a weird situation, but overall it was actually very good for 5's character. So she did die appropriately in my mind. Now when it comes to finally the story progression, this is huge, monumental, massive. First of all, let me start here. Lisa and 12. This is obvious. You have 12 and Lisa, and when they go over to this amusement park or some kind of carnival, whatever, as if he's taking her on a date. And remember how in episode 8 he talked to 9 about living a normal life. Stop what they're doing. This is what he's doing right now. What he's doing right now is he's trying to live a normal life, and he's just trying to take Lisa on a date, as any young boy would do for a young girl. However, thing here is that Lisa ain't having any of that because she knows that 9 is going to, because she knows that 9's in trouble. He gave himself up to the police. So you have 12, who is now conflicted with a lot of, because he's clearly feeling guilty for betraying 9, but he did so to save himself and Lisa, mainly Lisa, because he could have escaped at an earlier point in time, but he chose to stay there. So now, because in that mindset he's selfish, he's very selfish. However, it is the fact that he could still do something to help 9 that Lisa is mad about. And it's Lisa that winds up swaying 12 to actually do something, which in of itself was very fascinating, because Lisa, who you could say for the entirety of the series has been nothing but a burden to Sphinx, winds up being the catalyst to push 12 forward into doing something to help 9 in his greatest time of need. I mean, in essence, if not for the fact that 12 distracted 5 when she was driving the car, 9 may have actually been killed at that point in time. Who knows? Now, when it comes to the next part of the episode, that's also based on story progression. Obviously, it is the fact that 9 gave himself in to the police department of Japan and winds up escaping because of 5's actions. And finally, it is the bomb, the nuclear, the atomic bomb being released. It's going in like the upper layers of the planet, the atmosphere, whatever, and it's going to detonate. And he had that set up because of the fact that they didn't actually have this meeting. Like, they didn't have the, what's it called, the conference or some kind. Well, they were gonna have some kind of conference or some kind of like press conference, right? Press conference, and it didn't go the way it planned. And because of 5's actions, the bomb is wound up. The bomb is like, it's off. It's in the air, obviously. So when he does so, he has an automatic video feed playing, and he reveals his face to Japan, in essence, the world. So this is huge in the sense that 5 is dead, 9 is alive, but 9 has revealed his face to everyone in Japan. So they know who he is. There's going to be a manhunt, obviously. They just can't let a terrorist roam free. I mean, even though he is, in essence, a good guy who's done bad things, fact of the matter is that he has broken the law. And when you break the law, you must face punishment. So if 9 doesn't turn himself in again, he's going to be manhunted for the rest of his life. But it is 12 and Lisa who now have a chance to lead normal everyday lives. Fascinating. And then finally, the last part of the episode, which is, I think, is the biggest part, easy. Shibasaki and Mamiya. Where, and because I'm confused here, is Mamiya, because I thought that Mamiya was the person who killed themselves in an incident that occurred a few years ago. The incident that led to Shibasaki's decommission when he was a detective formerly. But apparently Mamiya is now like an old man. So I'm thinking that maybe either this Mamiya, like Mamiya never died from the incident, or he was never in the incident to begin with. Like, that was a fake. Like, the person who actually committed suicide was like a fake. It was a dummy. And the real Dr. Mamiya was here. Or he was in hiding, whatever. Leading a regular life, I suppose. So, again, I'm not too sure. I could be wrong. I could be mixing up characters. But if I'm wrong, let me know. But the thing here is this. What's very important about this is Mamiya reveals the reason why they did what they did. Why they took these 26 orphans into a settlement, the Rising Peace Academy, and how they experimented upon them with drugs and so on and so forth. They did it because they wanted to do two main things. One, bolster the intelligence of the future generation of Japan. And number two, to amass might and therefore gain independence. And they're doing it via two ways. From an economic standpoint and from a military standpoint. The key one being a military standpoint. You see, this ties into this whole notion that I think is very fascinating. You have Mamiya explain about how 70 years ago during the, of course, World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you have the nuclear weapons go off, obviously, and you had this entire area being a wasteland. Duh. Thing here is he explains that even though it's been like 70 plus years since then, Japan is still a defeated nation. And in order to become a true independent power, because from an economic standpoint, Japan is fantastic. But from a military standpoint, they still rely on countries like the United States of America when it comes to military aid. So in this sense, you bolster the intelligence of the future generation of Japan. Make them smarter, a cut above the rest of all the other kids in the world. And then you bolster your military might by creating atomic weapons in secret. When Clarence was talking to Five, when they were driving over to whatever, he was explaining about how we need to find 9. I mean, apparently 12 was on their list, whatever. They need to find 9 so they can have some evidence, a witness if you would, to prove that the Japanese were building atomic weapons in secret. So that's a major threat to not only China, but also to the United States of America. To all countries in that region. Because you have a nation that normally doesn't prioritize in military, bolstering their military, being backed up by a strong economy. Huge threat. Huge threat. So, what was fascinating in that aspect is that not only does it touch upon something very fascinating in the anime in of itself, but also it touches upon a real world concept. Because in the real world, there is clearly a lot of stigma when it comes to nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. It's very obvious. Even though I would argue that nuclear energy is the future for humanity when it comes to exploring outer reaches of the galaxy, the universe as a whole. I do believe that, honestly. However, stigma still exists. And they clearly exist in Japan. I mean, from my understanding, it's very strong when it comes to Japan. The stigma of nuclear energy because of, again, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If I'm wrong about that, and if you live in Japan, correct me if I'm wrong. But the point here is that you have them overcome said stigma and build atomic weapons for themselves. Why? Because in this day and age, what is the pinnacle of military might? You can say numbers, and technology as a whole is a key factor, but it is the ultimate form of destruction. Nuclear weapons that puts you a cut above everyone else, that makes you a true independent power to be feared. So, and in some cases revered as well. But the point here is that that's the whole point. The Americans can't afford. I mean, why the Americans, when they found out what was going on in this facility, they immediately came in there and they just took the kids, like, we're gone. And now that they have some kind of incident that ties the Japanese into creating nuclear devices, they're back in there again, the Americans. This time with Clarence and 5. So it is a means of the United States regulating the Japanese so the Japanese do not become too powerful. However, those in Japan who do strive for said power have done so in an immoral way. Because, again, when you experiment on kids, not exactly the best thing in the world. So what happens, obviously, is that you have Shibasaki say, like, it's not going to fly. I mean, even though I'm a detective, I'm one lone person, I'm going to continue to shout and scream and tell the world and tell the country that, hey, these people were trying, they were doing something that was, in the minds of many, grotesque, very immoral. So it's fascinating on a whole lot of levels when it comes to their discussion. And when it comes to, and I live in Japan, I don't. So I don't know what the mindset of people would be in this nation when it comes to watching this episode. This series as a whole, to be quite honest. But from my standpoint, I would maybe see it as a means of, because the series, I think, does make a subtle statement. Whereas, if I were to live in Japan, as a Japanese person, I would want to strive for more for my country and our position within the world as a military might, as a military power. So basically, it is trying to gain more. So overall, the episode, I think it's a solid, I think it's good, very good. Good plus to great, actually. I'm gonna give it a great. So even though the beginning did throw me off, I still think it has a lot of pros that can't be overlooked, in my personal opinion. So I am done. King of Lightning, rate the video, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Have a nice one.